Hello, hello. I think we're ready to go. Hey, Justin, do you know if Matt is going to be joining us as well?
Yep, Matt's,
Nice. I just
nope,
saw him.
he
Yep.
just popped in. You should see him now.
Let me grab
Yep.
him really quick. Hey, what's going on, Matt? Welcome.
Hello, hello.
Alrighty. Good afternoon, Whale Coin Talk community. My name is Noah. I'm here today with Justin and Matt. They're representing Solana Ventures and the Solana Foundation. Gentlemen, before we get started, do you want to give a quick background of yourselves, your career paths, and how you found yourselves working in the crypto industry today?
Sure. I'm happy to get started. Can you guys hear me
Yeah,
okay?
man, loud and clear.
Okay, cool. Yep, so my name's Justin. I'm on the Solana Ventures team. I've been in the crypto space for the last, I guess it's almost 7 years now. Have done a myriad of roles across research. I've had a few startups that I've started in the crypto space. I've worked at some TradFi firms helping them figure out their crypto strategy. I've pretty much been all over the place. My real entry into crypto was actually during one of my first classes at university. I had a professor who overheard me talking about trading, and at that time I wanted to be a trader. And he said, "Hey, if you like trading, I've got a market with a crapload of volatility for you to check out."
That's amazing. Yeah, so I'm Matt. I work at Solana Foundation. So I have, also been in crypto for quite some time. I come from like a games background. Worked at a mobile game company, then Riot Games, mostly on League of Legends, but helping them ship all around the world. And I saw separated data systems and payment networks and all these things. And I thought, hey, if you just had an open blockchain that could communicate with to anybody on the internet, that solves a lot of these problems that Riot was facing. Uh, Connecting communities and doing esports all around the world. And so we started essentially a game marketplace and platform for games to do just that. We had some NFTs, but this is 2017, so it wasn't exactly the same market as there is today. Our system was more buy once, play anywhere. So you could log into itch.io, you could log into Valve, you could launch on our platform and any platform we had integrations with. So that was kind of the play where the central database, or this not the centralized, but like the database of your ownership would be the blockchain, which was Ethereum. But I found that it didn't really scale to a lot of our like big mints. We had a lot of like really big projects actually, top 50 of Steam, and so I kind of actually left the blockchain space for a little while. I just didn't think it was quite ready for consumer-based apps, so I started a hearing aid company that's doing quite well. Worked for Unity for a little while in their machine learning. Saw a lot of the stuff that was coming with Chat GPT and assisted artistry and all these things. So I have kind of this combination of machine learning and blockchain background. Joined Solana about a year and a half ago now to really look at the ecosystem. How do you accelerate the ecosystem towards product market fit? You can kind of like at a high level, you can kind of announce all these problems that crypto solves, but turning that into a product that people love hasn't quite been done yet. There's like a lot of parallel streams that we have to solve, and yeah, I'm here to kind of do that.
Awesome, and I definitely want to jump into answering that question there, Matt, in a bit. But just to back up for a second, I want to address Solana Ventures first. And Justin, I'm assuming most of these questions are going to go to you. But can you start by giving us a high-level overview of what Solana Ventures is and what you guys are setting out to do?
Sure. Solana Ventures is sort of the in-house venture arm for Solana Labs, investing in early stage projects in the Solana ecosystem and looking to really accelerate their growth. There are no outside investors or anything like that. This is all coming from sort of balance sheet capital and looking to really make as big of an impact on the ecosystem as possible.
And how do you guys select who to invest in, what startups to invest in? What's your criteria?
Yeah, so I think there is a misconception that Solana Ventures and the Solana Foundation are sort of one and the same. And I'll let Matt touch on Solana Foundation later on. But Solana Ventures really invests like any traditional venture fund, right? So we're looking for, basically upside on early stage projects and looking to support those teams. We are not sort of in the business of giving out like non-dilutive grants or anything like that, which is a little bit different from I think what you've seen with other sort of ecosystem funds or similarly labeled funds in the past.
And how are you guys adjusting your strategy here in this bear market? Are you guys still investing in projects? Are you still investing in throwing capital at these ecosystems that are trying to build on Solana?
Yep, we're certainly still investing. I think, like everyone else, I think we are, obviously a bit more valuation sensitive. I think we are definitely, want to make sure that we're only investing in super high conviction plays right now, given, where we are in sort of the cycle. But yeah, we're certainly still investing. I think, if anything, the current market cycle has given us a great opportunity because valuations have come down to more reasonable levels. I think you saw during sort of the hype cycle of maybe, let's say a year ago, that valuations were getting to crazy numbers. There was very little product that was actually built, and people were able to fill up rounds in a week. I think that's changed significantly. Top founders are certainly still able to raise, and top teams, but I think that everything's happening on a much slower rate, and valuations have come down a little bit more in line with where they probably should be.
And here in the bear market, I guess what I want to focus on is the present and the future. What's the typical investment range that you guys are putting into these projects?
I'm not sure how much I can disclose as far as range, but I will say we are an early stage focused fund, and we generally don't lead rounds, and so that normally means 6-figure size checks for teams in their earlier stages.
And if you're able to disclose, what are some projects that you guys invested in a year ago or 2 years ago that are still around and thriving today?
Yeah, I would say many of the sort of big names in the Solana ecosystem were seeded, at least in part, by Solana Ventures. One great example that I'm sure all of you are familiar with who have used Solana is Phantom. So we invested in Phantom, which is the largest wallet on Solana, and as well as Magic Eden, which is the largest NFT marketplace. I thought those two would be good to call out.
Right on. Any Web3 games?
We've invested in a ton of Web3 games. I won't step on Matt's toes too much there as far as the gaming strategy, but I think we are very excited about the gaming ecosystem on Solana, both at the Solana Foundation and at Solana Labs. There is an immense opportunity there given the Solana tech stack and the amount of talent that we have building an ecosystem at the moment.
Before I get to some foundation questions, Justin, and then after that, some ecosystem questions, is there anything about Solana Ventures that you'd like to highlight that I missed? I didn't want to go too deep in, because I know a lot of these questions are not you're not able to answer, but anything that you want to share with us?
I don't think anything in particular that stands out. I will just sort of to follow up on what I said previously. Solana Ventures is a for-profit investment business, and so I think there are a lot of misconceptions in the industry about, hey, what does a name like Solana Ventures actually mean? Does this mean we're officially sponsored by Solana or something like that? And the answer is no. Solana Ventures is a subsidiary of Solana Labs, and we're making investments as any other investment firm would in the space. And I think a lot of times people lose sight of that just given the name.
Yeah, no doubt. But are you guys investing specifically in projects building on Solana, or are you investing outside of the ecosystem as well?
Our mandate is to invest within the Solana ecosystem, and we are primarily looking for Solana native projects. And when I say Solana native, I essentially mean either built entirely on Solana or exclusively on Solana or built on Solana first and then later adding sort of cross-chain bridges. But you should think anyone that we're taking a serious look at will be sort of Solana native teams.
Understood. And how big is your team?
Our team is quite small. It's really just a handful of us. And so what that means is that we all sort of have, our hands on sort of all the deals that come through, and really like to take like a team-based approach where we really gain, consensus on everything we're doing. It's really not, the sort of fund where it's like, one person, one investment, right? I think we all want to have conviction in all the projects.
How do you guys decide? Let's say there are 10 of you. I'm just making up a number. How do you guys decide? Is it based on a majority vote? Is it based on certain votes have more weight?
No, I'll honestly say, generally speaking, like we are pretty much in agreement on on many of these things. I think we all see so many of these deals, and we're also ingrained in the ecosystem that like we have similar opinions on what potentially makes sense. And I think because of that, we've been able to really streamline our process to where there isn't a ton of back and forth as far as should we move forward in an investment or not.
And what advice would you give to someone who's A, trying to potentially join your team, or B, looking to join a VC, a crypto VC, and take part in that?
Yeah, one thing I always say to people is like you cannot I can't underestimate how valuable putting out your own research is on things, right? Everyone has there's this phrase of DYOR, like do your own research. But truly like being able to come to an interview with the potential employer and saying, hey, look, here's an article I wrote about this exact topic we just talked about. Take a look at it and let me know what you think. That's like one of the most powerful plays that you can use. And I did the exact same thing. My previous role just before joining Solana Labs was on the research side. And one of the ways that I sort of wiggled my way in was, sending the articles that I'd written in the past to some of the people on the Solana team and being like, hey, here are some great examples of, my thought process and how I think crypto progresses. And that really shows a lot about not only your character but also obviously your skill set and how much you know about the industry.
I couldn't agree more. Just an important nugget of wisdom. Justin, how do you personally how do you choose what factors or actually let me rephrase the question, sorry. When you're looking at whether or not you guys are going to invest in a project, what are some key factors you look at, ranging from the tech to the team to the value prop? I would love to hear more about that.
Yep. So all those things you mentioned are obviously super important, right? I think team is always critical, especially given how early stage we're investing in these projects. Oftentimes you don't know what the sort of end result will be, right? Maybe you start out doing one thing and you end up pivoting and moving towards another, entire product. And so team is a super important part of it. Obviously, like you were just saying, sort of product market fit is also a big part of it. So if you can demonstrate, hey, we have product market fit, we have X number of users and they're spending X number of hours a day, and the feedback is really positive, like that's a great sign that hey, like there may be an area for you to succeed. um I would say valuation and tokenomics play a big role in it as well, right? So do we see upside here from an investment perspective? Do we think that the value will accrue to whatever we're investing in, whether that's tokens or equity or both? And one other big thing I would say as well is really just like looking at the total addressable market, right? How large is the potential, how large is like the potential for this project, right? Is it going to be something that at maximum has, 5,000 users and they're power users, but it kind of caps out there? Or is it something that can get, 10, 20, 50 million users and could potentially help bring Solana to sort of the global stage? And so all of these things and obviously a bunch of other considerations kind of go into it, but overall there is definitely a balancing act between these different parameters.
Great, thank you, Justin. And again, if there's anything else about Solana Ventures that I've missed or that you want to tell us about, just feel free to chime in or let me know. I wanted to move on and ask a bit about the foundation, the Solana Foundation, and I'm not sure, Matt or Justin, who's better to address these questions to, but I'm just going to ask away. My first is basically who qualifies for a grant and what is the process for applying?
Yeah, so Ventures is definitely a profit-seeking entity looking for venture return. And the grants for the foundation are really more about decentralization, open source, public goods that benefit the Solana ecosystem. People pay into Solana and give it value, and the SOL tokens there to help add value to the ecosystem. Every once in a while, there'll be some level of a measure of decentralization is bringing more people and just users into the ecosystem, so that can be a piece of it, but that's definitely not what we use it for most of the time. Like a lot of these other ecosystems who are just paying for certain projects or things like that. There's very clear tech differentiation on Solana, and we want people to move over to Solana for a product decision, and so that's typically what the grants are geared towards. So if you're producing something, open source and indexer, infrastructure in some way, some creative, tooling. That's the kind of stuff that we really get excited about. Oh, and then there's just a grants page on solana.org/grants.
Got it. And last year, how many projects were given a grant or approved into the program?
Oh, that's it. I actually don't know the exact number. I mean, we also have, I guess, any sort of grant. I think that would also include hackathon projects and other things. Those come out of Solana Foundation as well. So the number probably gets, probably 3 digits, but they're not large. They are non-dilutive. I want to kind of like address that a little bit. Like, these grants aren't there to they're there to like accelerate and augment. They're not really there to pay for an entire project. We think a lot about what's sustainable in this world where there's just a lot of variance already. We don't want to just invest in something that isn't really set up itself for success and there's not a long-term strategy. So it's really about augmenting something and just kind of accelerating it. So they are smaller and more grants for
Got it. So even though Solana has massive NFT and Web3 gaming communities, they're not necessarily fit for these sorts of grants.
Yeah, correct. I mean, so if I'm a game community, I don't know. I work for Riot. So let's say our network optimization team was like we had this whole direct connect team that would help route transactions or network calls basically for League of Legends. And that team was enormous and a huge concentration for us to reduce ping times by 10%. If Solana network has total finality around 1.8 seconds over the last 6 to 7 months, and that's an order of magnitude better. We're talking like 95% better than other chains. And so we really want people that understand from a product and tech decision why they're making their choice of which chain, and we're trying to like accelerate that as opposed to this whole model of acquiring because of token hype, or that is a little bit less of the game that we're playing.
Yeah, I got you. The server program, is this just a way for people to get access to discounted VPSs so that they can run a node?
So the server program is a little bit different than a grant. We actually just stake to the node, so you can just earn yield off that.
I wasn't sure what the server program was. I was reading it off your website and just wanted to have some light shed on that.
Yeah, right. So there's actually some pretty interesting plays going on with that. One, we have some hardware that we can help you, just procuring, the right configuration and stuff. And we have different providers, so it decentralizes any point of failure. There's some weird misnomer that a lot of Solana is on AWS, but it's actually one of the lowest percentage of AWS of any network. I think it's something like 13% of stake. I don't know exactly. It's in the low teens. Whereas like Ethereum mainnet, something like 40 something percent of their stake weights on AWS, and so that's a number we really care about, is because it's one entity that controls nodes, and and so we that's a lot of what the server program does, is make sure that both geographically and in terms of the provider can be distributed.
I definitely want to jump into nodes a bit more once we start talking about the ecosystem, and the delegation program. I'm assuming ties into the server program. Can you give some insight into that, please, and then we can move to ecosystem.
Yeah, they're pretty collaborative. I mean, obviously, people who get server program often also qualify for the delegation program, and we're also, a lot of it is like an interesting business model going forward, especially with something like stake weight quality of service, where people can guarantee access to the network by the amount of stake they have. There's these really interesting business models where, let's go back to like games, something you asked about earlier. A game could run its own RPC node and then get staked to it and guarantee that its players will have access, even if there's other congestion or other like bonk mint or something on some other part of the network, or like even just several other mints that are like taking up all threads. You could guarantee yourself your app access to the network in this way. And so kickstarting that as a business for these games is really interesting. So that's something that we're like heavily exploring through this. But it's Solana Foundation staking to that infrastructure of the validator.
And I guess I can skip my next question and then come back to it. But what are the requirements for, since we're on the topic, what are the requirements for running a validator? I mean, software, hardware, and then token requirements.
I want to be very clear here. This is something that's kind of hard to communicate. There's nobody you could just get on a computer and download the software and like start a node right now. Whether it'd be profitable or not, I don't know. But you could do that on like a Raspberry Pi. It just wouldn't be profitable when it came. If you had enough stake to it, and it would come to you, you would just not process enough. There's no entity that's like approving new nodes, new validators. It's just about profitability. So there's some recommended settings that will stand up to the throughput, and we've seen to be profitable. But again, that's not a requirement. The server program in the stake program from the foundation does have some stipulations around it, because we don't want to be staking to seedy individuals, and there's a certain quality bar that we want them to uphold. But in terms of like break-even points, that obviously will just kind of like fluctuate with other aspects of the network, how many transactions are happening, token price, different things like that. There's like calculators out there that you can kind of see how much Solana stake you would need. Hardware costs themselves, a lot of people actually run on-prem because egress costs, which for cloud providers tend to not be very good, or expensive is another way of saying that. So that's part of the reason why Solana's validator nodes are so decentralized, is because a lot of people just run their own on-prem or services that host on-prem, and and none of those are super huge. So I don't know. That's kind of like, if I was to start one, there's a few documents online, and then you can look into those calculations and see how much.
So it sounds like it's pretty easy to run a node. You said just do it on a Raspberry Pi if you wanted to. I read on your website that there are a little over 2,000 mainnet validators. Why is that number? I guess out of curiosity, why is that number so low if it's so easy to just spin up a node?
You can do it on a Raspberry Pi. You would be extremely unprofitable if you did that. I want to be very clear here. So the recommended settings are way above that, especially on the things like memory. The low comment, I mean, there's only about 9,000 nodes that run Ethereum, and Solana runs about the most nodes of any. Well, what's your reference point that you would say 2,000 is low?
My reference point. That's a good question. I guess I would look at an ecosystem like Ethereum's, for example, and that's the one I'm most familiar with. And I would look at the number of validators that they're running and how decentralized that ecosystem is versus Solana's. But I'm coming into this kind of with an open mind and a bit ignorant, because I haven't done a huge deep dive into Solana up until very recently. And so this is a way for me to, and for the audience, to learn more about kind of the ways your ecosystem is distinguishing itself as a layer one. One of my first questions in this segment was to give, if I was a newbie coming into the industry, how would you give me a high-level overview of what Solana is and what solutions your layer one blockchain aims to solve, and why people would choose Solana over other layer one or even layer two solutions?
It's really about like transacting and settlement at the speed, as close to the speed of light as possible with anybody on the internet. I think a really good example that kind of highlights this is Circle will pay out with single confirmation, full finality. So Circle will pay millions of dollars to certify your USDC to redemption. on other networks that can take minutes or even like near an hour. Whereas Solana's 400 milliseconds. So Solana's never had a rollback in the history of its chain, and it's just very, very much like Web2 speeds. Solana also does more transactions per day than all their blockchains combined, and it does so. The architecture is entirely new. It's network engineers from Qualcomm and compiler and really low level, like kind of boring tech that was just really, really hyper optimized for the blockchain application. And it's totally new. There's not like a rehash of Ethereum code that was optimized and put a consensus layer on top of it or something. It's entirely new architecture, hyper optimized for blockchain. And so there's some misnomers that it's like a lot of sacrifices in some of the like security or decentralization in the trilemma, but it's actually more just again application specific engineering and really optimized for kind of Web2 speeds and being able to be this transaction layer of the open internet.
Got it. So kind of going back to where we started about the number of validators, currently a little over 2,000, and it's quite a few, I guess, relatively speaking, according to you. And these are validators running because they are profitable. It's easy to run a validator, but it's typically not profitable. Therefore, most people won't do it. And sorry if I'm paraphrasing you, but that's kind of the gist I got. Maybe not easy, but you said that you could, but it's probably not profitable to do it on your computer. You need a sufficient amount of, sufficiently powerful hardware in order to do so. And it seems like 2,000 people are currently doing that.
Yep. Again, profitability will kind of adjust based on network throughput. Validators get paid based on network traffic, and they stake, and so the price of Sol also plays into a factor. So I don't know the break-even point right now, but a lot of them are very profitable operating their businesses. There's also just like the Ethereum ecosystem, there's MEV, there's other business model opportunities that a lot of them will do. So, and the other thing that matters a lot is the stake distribution. So it's not just the pure number. And Solana has a really high or really good stake distribution. I think something like Nakamoto coefficients around 30. I don't know what it is live right now, but that's pretty best in class for the industry. I know that it's probably you're coming into this fresh. You probably heard a lot of things around Solana being centralized in various ways, and that can be there's a lot of different ways to looking at decentralization, and I'm happy to address any given one, but and a lot of people just assume because the hardware costs or like the hardware or you just the network throughput, I should say, requires a decent amount of hardware. That doesn't mean that a lot of people aren't able to run it profitably and have access to it. Similar to where Ethereum proof of stake that they moved to requires a large amount of Ethereum now to run on the network. There's just going to be some barriers and trade-offs almost anywhere when you're trying to run profitably your node. So it's just about lowering that barrier for, even though there is a little bit of hardware costs, a lot of what we do is to lower the barrier.
And I guess while we're on the subject, I have heard that before. Like Solana is super centralized, and I'm sure a lot of it's FUD as well. Because it's centralized, they can freeze certain accounts. Because it's centralized, they can do things that aren't allowed on traditional blockchains. Matt, would you mind shedding some light on that and kind of debunking some of those myths?
Yeah, sure. Great. Again, there's a lot of measures of this. So the one, I think the blockchain has halted, I think, 3 times in the last 18 months or something like that. And I think some people have this misnomer that somebody turned it off, and it's really just some normal networking distributed system things where there's it's actually almost a measure of decentralization where those independent entities can't come to a agreement on what the next block should be. And so it's actually, it halts because of that. Then there is one entity that's deciding to turn or there's no like restart button or anything like that. What happens is, there's some bug, and this happens a lot in Ethereum ecosystem or Cosmos, where chains will halt as well. They don't get as much publicity for some reason, but yeah, many networks of traffic have seen like blocks stop propagating, and then then basically the validators agree on the most up-to-date slot. There's signatures there that they can verify. They verify together, and then when they bring the network back up, it needs 80% of stake to agree. And so there's no process there that is centralized at all. It's a bunch of people coming together and entering into gossip and beginning voting again. So there's that level, and then there's just the amount of participants in the network. The other thing is like a distributed replica of the state. So that's like a really thing that matters, because if there's some sort of attack or being at Solana, you can prove the state, and there's there's 2,000 validator nodes and then several thousand RPC nodes, so it's around 3,800 or something, 3,600 total nodes that have the updated state of the network. And then I guess the other stuff, there's like some nuanced stuff around the way that programs work that is a little bit different than Ethereum. So Ethereum works a lot with interfaces. So Open Zeppelin, or you have this ERC20 and ERC721, where each independent entity deploys their own contract. On Solana, you can reuse the code of other people's contracts more, and there's some flack in this ecosystem around that being centralized, because there is reuse. So you have in some case thousands of entities using the same executable code. But I don't know, that's just like a design decision. Those can be locked and immutable just like anything else. So it's kind of up to the people who are using those various protocols what their risk tolerance, or like how much they want to use different functionality. The core like SPL tokens are mostly locked, or sorry, SPL governance, like the things that Solana Labs produces, are mostly locked and after audit, and those are the kind of core primitives of Solana. But those are also just programs that actively work on the network. There's no core protocol thing that Solana Labs is just pushing. Solana Labs, just like any other decentralized network, they just put code up onto a GitHub repo, and then validators choose to run that code. So there's no in fact, and very different than a lot of these other networks, is Solana Labs doesn't run any of the infrastructure. It's all independent validator nodes and all these independent entities that are just, again, choosing to run code that gets put up on the GitHub repo. So I don't know, happy to answer any specific questions about any of this stuff, but there's really not and the other thing that's pretty interesting about the Solana ecosystem is all of the core development happens in a publicly visible Discord channel. It's just called Solana Tech. That's literally where that's where I go. I mean, as like a foundation engineer, I go to the Solana Tech Discord that is publicly available to ask questions and talk to our core engineers. So in that sense, it's very visible, very transparent, very open. And I understand that the narrative has been lost there. It's kind of interesting because some people think that even some ecosystems with 100 permissioned validators are more decentralized than Solana, but we're working on that. We're trying to figure out how to communicate that effectively. But decentralization is a huge issue for us. We're trying to be this, we're trying to facilitate a network that is, handling transactions at the speed of light that are very high value across the world, and being this kind of open public good. And being centralized is very against that ethos. So this is something that's really top of mind for us.
I guess while we're debunking myths, I hear oftentimes that Solana is meant to be an Ethereum killer, and I personally think that when it comes to layer ones and even layer twos, it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, especially as the industry grows and especially as more people start to come in and build. Was that ever the ethos, or was that ever a thing for Solana, that you guys are an Ethereum killer, or was it just meant to be its own blockchain with its own value prop and attracting projects that can utilize your tech and build on your tech, where else they otherwise might not be able to on a slower blockchain.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can step in there for a little bit and then I'll pass it off to Matt. I think one thing that people often sort of mistake in terms of Solana and then sort of the goals, of Solana Foundation and Solana Labs is like the goal is not, hey, let's get to as big as Ethereum, right? Let's get to as many total users as Ethereum. The goal is like, hey, how do we get to be as big as Facebook? How do we get to be as big as, Instagram or Google or all these other services, right? I think the end goal isn't, hey, let's get a few million users. It's how do we get to a billion users self-custodying their assets? And so when you think about it that way, I think it's like pretty clear. It's like, look, no blockchain has really achieved sufficient saturation in the market where it's even close to like zero sum. And right now, like the total focus is, hey, how do we onboard users, right? Not how do we steal users from one place versus another.
Yeah, so what are some strategies you guys are using to onboard users? What are some marketing strategies you guys are using to generate exposure? These spaces are great, right? A lot of people have common misconceptions. They come onto a space and they hear the people that are actually building the ecosystem speak firsthand, and it shifts their way of thinking. It shifts their perspective when it comes to what they might have read on Reddit or heard on YouTube or read on Twitter. So apart from spaces, like how are you guys? It'll That's one question. How are you guys generating exposure? But it's going to lead me into a question I was going to ask later on. But we believe at WCT that education is a critical catalyst in driving mass adoption. So how is Solana utilizing its resources to do just that, to educate the masses, to spread awareness of their blockchain and just the power of Web3?
Well, frankly, people talk a lot about Solana marketing, but we don't even have a marketing department. Up until this point, basically people have self-selected and actually like a lot of these great builders have seen that there's actually tech differentiation and they can build their products most effectively on Solana, and they've built great products and consumers have come. It's really that kind of flywheel. But that isn't to say that we're clearly in that path. We kind of lost the narrative with some groups, and some people kind of took the narrative for us. Especially like the narrative that you're just talking about was very much in line with that. We don't want to be like Ethereum killers. There's nothing really that vitriol about our brand at all. We like Justin's saying, we're just trying to prepare businesses up for success to reach like their adoption and make products that people love, utilizing self-custody and individual freedoms and stuff. So and like freedom of collaboration. So yeah, I would say that it's on us now to kind of help that a little bit and help our ecosystem communicate some of those things. So we're starting to get a little bit of a marketing chops in there, and I totally agree with you. I don't. This isn't me trying to say that we should never have to. And it's really about resetting the conversation and saying, yeah, we're happy to have our place in a multi-chain future where we're this transaction layer that can settle value transactions at the speed of light and kind of be that, I don't know, NASDAQ / game engine / whatever, that Web3, wherever we fit in this new world. It's exciting to figure that out with the rest of the blockchain ecosystem. Yeah, and so resetting those narratives and and kind of like controlling it, and we're doing a lot of collaboration with a lot of these other ecosystems. Like Justin's saying, it's definitely not zero sum. We're happy to collaborate with a lot of the other L1s and L2s. So it's yeah.
You mentioned, Matt, the outages, and just I wanted to brush on it really quick. From a technical perspective, can you tell us a bit more about what happened and then what's being done to address those?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Solana is a very nascent, it used to be a very nascent ecosystem built from the ground up, from like nothing. It's just starting from Genesis code. Like that was writing like 5 years ago, 4 years ago. So there's just like that level of maturity to find like all the edge cases and things. The other thing that I think is really important of note here is that so Ethereum with proof of stake is optimizes for liveliness because it has a bunch of settlement of L2s and things, but it sacrifices a little bit of security. And by security, I'm defining it here as if a bunch of stake goes offline, Ethereum's proof of stake will still go up. If 33% of stake on Solana goes down, the network will go down. Or if it just can't come to a consensus, it'll go down. And that's basically what happened. There was just it entered into some state where some validators didn't agree on the next block, and then the blocks just stopped propagating, and they had to confirm what the most up to date confirmed block was, and then figure out what was kind of the issue, and then they said, oh, okay, this is the fix, or this is just that was like a temporary bug, and then whatever, and then they would agree to start up at again 80% of stake had to agree. So yeah, that's kind of like essentially what happens. It is a decentralization of these networks. So there's like decentralization in terms of state, so that there's like a redundancy. So that's like a security layer where a bunch of different entities independently have state that they can prove the accuracy of. The redundancy does not necessarily help liveliness, again, because if they just don't agree. A single one of the nodes would have agreed with itself and continued on just fine in each of those situations. So the things that we're doing, so one of the major things is around like the transaction fees and spam of the network, and we've done I think honestly like pretty novel things there. So one is just knowing the originator of the transactions. So it's called Quick protocol. So you can, and we used to be called UDP. So it's like this, they would just send transactions, fire and forget type of model. And so the network the validators had no way of knowing where the transactions were coming from. So something can just spam. But now with Quick, you both know where it's coming from and you know how much stake they have. So you can both, naive spam can just be for like left aside. And then if they have distributed spam, then you can slash them. So that's what the stake Quick quality of service does. So it's basically this DDoS protection that is validator tools. There's no like gateway, there's no centralized service there. It's just each independent validator has ways of stopping those kinds of saturation of the network or things that would overload the network. And then kind of a major other side of this is getting a second validator client. Right now, the only network that I know of that has more than one client is Ethereum mainnet. And Solana is going to have a second one in FireDancer, which should reduce a lot of the, like if there's like a bug or something in one, having fallback logic to the other validator that's running off the same state will really increase the redundancy of the network and so make it much more fault tolerant. And that is actively in development, and they have like nodes propagating. It's still like a little ways off, but really this just continue. I think something really of note is that Solana is basically the network that just keeps on improving. There's been 11 major releases, or 12 major releases. Anyway, and if you just look at the network from like now versus a year ago, it's just head and shoulders better, more efficient, way less, way more like stable, and can handle mints way better, and all these things. And so it's just about that. Iterative improvements in engineering, as well as these other major initiatives I talked about.
Great. Yeah, thanks for clearing that up, Matt. And hopefully that sheds a lot of light to people who were confused or misinformed about the outages and what you guys have done to mitigate those going forward. Interoperability is really important. One of the ways that, especially last year, I was participating and kind of inclined to participate in these new ecosystems that were popping up, whether it was EVM, whether it was AVAX's C chain, whether it was Phantom, whether it's like now Arbitrum or Optimism, was just that it was very seamless for me to use a bridge and bridge assets over from Ethereum to another EVM compatible ecosystem. So my question is, has Solana set down the framework necessary for people? Because like it or not, right? Ethereum has the most value on it right now, rather the most amount of wealth on it right now. And so if people want to participate in your ecosystem, there needs to be a seamless way for them to bridge assets over. What are some ways that you guys recommend? NFA, obviously, but what are some ways that you guys recommend users go about in doing so?
There's a few bridges now, actually. There's Wormhole, Allbridge, Multichain. There's like several bridges basically, and there's also just kind of these cross-chain protocols that will do these kind of like kind of Web 2.5 versions of bridging, where they'll like certify an asset for you. We are pretty agnostic to each of the approaches. I think there's a lot of exploration that needs to happen with bridges because they're one of the major points of failure, as you've seen with a lot of the hacks. And so, yeah, we on our side, there's it's actually a lot of it is around things like it gets really boring. It's like really technical stuff around making it so transactions are compliant with certain, especially like a lot of the zero knowledge proof stuff. So you can kind of do a proof on one side and then deliver the proof on the other, and that like it was locked, for example, and do like that kind of cross-chain message passing without necessarily needing a relay network. And so we're doing a lot of work on that side and have some partners that are working with us on that. So it's really just working with anybody who wants to add an integration. If somebody's trying to add like value to the chain and make Solana more connected, we're really excited to work with them.
How easy is it for EVM compatible projects to migrate over? Let's say like an Aave or a Curve or not Uniswap, because Uniswap seems like they just want to stick on Ethereum for the most part.
Sure. Well, there's today they would have like basically have to reprogram it into SVM, or they could use C, or there's a couple other languages, even like Python through Seahorse you can program on Solana, but not too far from now. I think it's February 1st. I don't want to give the exact date. It's an external team, but the Neon Labs is making an EVM compatible layer on Solana. Happy to talk about the innards of that, but basically you can think of it as every single transaction settles onto Solana, but it's EVM. So it's pretty interesting. And a lot of their initial explorations are just these DeFi protocols that are proliferating around EVM, like Aave. So it's already been tested. In fact, like there is literally EVM Aave on testnet Solana right now.
That's awesome. I honestly had no idea. I think it's really exciting for you guys. Has Solana ever had any liquidity incentive programs or plan on having them in the future?
I don't know if I would say we never have. It's certainly not a big focus. Again, like I was saying earlier, our grants program and a lot of these things are around long term, and you have to make a really compelling case that a business model is sustainable if it relies on some sort of percentage, incentive program like that. We've seen a lot of those just not necessarily lead to long term success. They'll just kind of like hop around from ecosystem to ecosystem. We're kind of trying to facilitate things that are just native to Solana that just add value, just add a lot of value. And so I don't think that's something that we're particularly focused on right now.
And I got one or two more technical questions before we get into the fun stuff. The new token 22 standard, I read that it'll enable the development of new applications like collecting royalties on transfers and ownership and confidential payments. Can you kind of explain that in a more tangible way? How what does it mean for future dApps that are being built on Solana? Sorry.
Oh, wow. There's a lot that goes. I mean, you kind of got it actually. So you can any value transfer you can essentially charge the issuer of the token can charge on whatever percentage or basis points they want on top of that token, even like vote transactions, things like that. And then you can also do confidential transactions, so you can see who transferring from and transferring to, but you can't see the balances of each or how much is being transferred, which is and there's other protocols that are working like on different types of visibility. So that one's like confidentiality of transfer. There's other anonymity protocols like Elusive and other things that will make it so that the actual entities are anonymous, either through like a ZK primitives like Elusive, or there's other like relayer networks and mixers and stuff that sit on top of token 22. Yeah, that will do it like a different way. So basically, there's like a lot of different ways that are being explored for a lot of these different things. And then what token 22 does is just give a lot more options for the builders. So yeah, we're pretty excited about it. It's still being audited right now, but yeah, there's a lot of people doing explorations.
Cool, right on. I was on Justin's Space, I think it was last week, and someone said that the first time they worked with Solana, they thought to themselves, this is the way a blockchain should feel. And my assumption is that Solana being as fast as it is, almost feels in some cases like you're not even interfacing with the blockchain. And I'm gonna go ahead and assume that that's the reason the NFT community is so massive on Solana, and more specifically, there's a massive Web3 gaming community on Solana. So I'm going to start with NFTs. Why do you believe, apart from what I've just stated, the NFT community on Solana is so massive? And then we can kind of get into Web3 gaming, which is my favorite niche of the industry, and yours as well, obviously.
Well, I'll just say I'm sure Justin has his own feelings, but I'll just say that user experience matters. I wouldn't say that NFTs are even the one that really, really, really highlight the technology. I mean, Ethereum's handles NFTs just fine. It's really just what Solana has shown is that if you just have really, really good programming and networking, that you can create these user experiences that feel like Web2, and people really like that.
Yeah, the thing I'll say, and this is a bit of a chicken or the egg thing, right, is Solana is statistically speaking like one of the most used, if not the most used blockchain, right? It's processing more transactions on a daily basis than all the other EVM chains combined. There are, hundreds of thousands of daily active users. And so like the community on Solana is very lively, even outside of the NFT space. And I think it becomes very apparent when you're a project and you're looking at where you want to launch something that, hey, there's only a few chains right now that really have sort of sustainable, NFT volumes and user bases. And Solana is one of those chains. And then you add on to the fact that you have all these interesting tech innovations between the speed of transactions and the low cost of transactions and the ability to mint NFTs for a very low price. There's a lot of like really interesting, compelling things that I think bring people to the Solana NFT ecosystem. And then you top it off with the UX that Matt was talking about, and I think it becomes pretty clear why Solana has emerged as such a vibrant NFT ecosystem.
Okay, so Matt, let's jump into Web3 gaming. Why is Solana so prime for Web3 games to be built? And I mean, is it going to be the premier ecosystem for Web3 games going forward?
I think it's a pretty easy. I mean, I don't know. It feels kind of weird to me. A lot of the conversations that can happen around this. Like again, if I'm making a game, almost every other part of the stack, I'm just paying millions of dollars for 10% optimizations and load times and ping times and other things. Why would you not do that with the blockchain layer too? And if you can do that with one of the most decentralized networks that has this huge developer community. I think there's just a lot of people that are self-selecting into that. And if people, I think a lot of the builders that did cut through a lot of the noise and figure out that like Solana is a very interesting place for their product, that a lot of those builders are great builders. Like I think they're making really great games, and we're trying to do what we can from our side to help them out with their experience. I think the challenge is that like I can say all this, but nobody in any ecosystem has really found product market fit yet. There's a few cases where these play to earn or yielding economies temporarily brought a lot of users in because they were paying them in certain ways, but that's not really going to get to tons and tons of users. What we really need to do is find where something where the blockchain integration itself is adding value, either by shortening dev times or by actually just like incentivizing value in the ecosystem. And I don't mean that by just minting tokens for people to then spend on the market or something like that. Just is there something that some players can do that should be incentivized that other players are willing to pay for? And you can do that much more frictionlessly with blockchain. And I think that's one of my main focuses at Solana. It's like what can I do to unlock that economy? That's why the way I see it. Like I think one of the reasons why we haven't seen like the killer use case yet is it kind of takes time for these B2B to C kind of plays, and that's almost everything that blockchain has to be, or otherwise why wouldn't you just do it in Web2 if you're just going to be B2C? Maybe some regulatory things or maybe some liquidity things, but overall the things that are really going to 10x Web2 are going to be these multi-collaborative products. And you see with Roblox and a bunch of other of these things that can take time. And it doesn't necessarily mean interoperability of items across games. That certainly is going to happen in certain explorations, but it's somebody produces a DeFi protocol that works with a game. Now any game can use that same DeFi protocol. That's what I think is really exciting about these Solana specifically, is that there's this like interoperability layer that once some people find some business models that kind of work and players find super fun, all the other games on Solana in the same state, same liquidity, can interact with that same type of layer and iterate on top of that known fun thing. So I don't know. I think it's really just set up for success, and we're all here just trying to figure it out.
So what are some of your favorite games right now that are being built on Solana?
Oh man, there's way too many to really like highlight one or even like some small set of them. I think what's really neat is that there's so many good builders, and we're lucky to have like a lot of different genres and a lot of different views on the world, and even just different levels of integration from what some people would consider like light integrations of things that sit on top of their experience, all the way to like really like having almost their entire game on chain. So I'm just really excited for all that exploration.
MMORPGs are my favorite genre of video game, and I'd be curious to know how far down the line do you think we'll see forget successful MMO, because that's a different argument. It's like 1% of MMOs succeed, less than that. But how far down the line do you think we'll see like a full-fledged MMORPG on the blockchain, maybe on Solana, where people are actually playing and spending, in some cases, all day immersed in that world?
Well, that's actually a really good question. So I get this question a lot, like, why are the games on blockchain worse than Web2? And I think it's actually just the timing thing. I don't think it's anything really. There's nothing fundamental about a blockchain game that makes it less fun than a Web2 game. I mean, in fact, you just have more tools. So why wouldn't it just be over time? I think they're just going to be strictly better. Yeah, so it's really just blockchain games really only got popular a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it takes a long time to make a really good game. Like I think I was like helping on some of the first code for Valorant. Like I don't know, what was that, like 9 years? Like 9 or 10 years ago. Basically, like 7 years is how long that game took to develop, and that's not even like a full-fledged MMO. That's like a session-based PvP shooter, that attack shooter that already has heavy inspo from like CS:GO, and it still took 7-8 years to make. So making a full-fledged MMO, it just takes time, and you see that with a bunch of other games, like the Kickstarter games, like Star Citizen, or like the City State Entertainment game, what's called Camelot Unchained. So there's like some of these games will take multiple years, and it's really hard to make these compelling experiences. Like and just making games is hard. So I think one of the really interesting things, though, is MMOs are so natural for blockchain. What you'll probably see is a game that was already being built, just saying, "Hey, I think actually it's pretty easy." Not easy. That's probably not the right word, but like I think I can find a compelling way to integrate blockchain into this economy, and we're seeing that with, like, I think Earth from Another Sun will release this year, which is a game that's been in development for about 5 or 6 years. It was actually one of the Unity Unite keynote speakers in 2019. It was already in development for 2 years at that time, and that's coming out on Solana. It's a space MMO with a bunch of it's got ground combat, space combat, a bunch of really great things, and they're thinking about crypto really cool. So it may not be that far along as you think.
Yeah, and the reason I use MMORPGs as an example is apart from the fact that I just love them is because I can just see the potential of an MMORPG like World of Warcraft, um, and on the blockchain where you can have asset ownership and you can have like a proprietary NFT marketplace where like gold and items are traded, and the Activision can take some of the money because they love money, and so you charge like a 5% um, marketplace fee. I have this vision for MMOs on the blockchain, and I think that once that actually happens, it's going to just shift the way that people that gamers play those sorts of games. But I mean, you can get into games like Fortnite as well, and like how attached people are to their accounts and their skins and all that stuff. But I could talk your head off for. I guess we could have this conversation for hours. You could, yeah, go.
Well, it's pretty funny you mentioned this because Totally actually tells the story a lot. He used to play Ultima Online when he was growing up, and he was like sending cashier's checks to people over snail mail to get items from people around the world. And so like there's been black markets around MMOs forever, and I think a lot of people like you see this as a way to just make that a little bit more like if you can mindfully make that a little bit more involved in the game loop, then you don't have to worry about that cashier's check being cashed without the item being traded.
I also think that there's like a lot of additional value that this brings to that, like the potential that for blockchain to bring to gamers. 'Cause if you think about it, I mean, one thing that I've experienced many times is like grinding in a game, spending hundreds of hours, and then you're like, okay, now I'm kind of done with the game, or I don't really like it anymore, or the new one came out, and like I have all these assets and they're like completely worthless, right? And sometimes you even spent real dollars on them. If you look at games like 2K or FIFA or whatever, and so the ability to have these assets that you can retain, both beyond one game, but also can actually have full ownership and can do things like renting or selling the assets if you're done with the game, like is a huge innovation, right? And I think of that type of sort of like rhetoric is going to be what drives blockchain gaming forward, right? More about this is an improvement for gamers rather than, hey, this is just some cool flashy tech that we get to put on the blockchain and raise more money than we would have just building a traditional game.
I have a hard stop at 3:30.
Oh,
sorry.
no,
Sorry,
no worries at all.
I do want to say that it's kind of off that point. I think I totally agree with Justin, and I also think even like kind of the next pip down is like is redefining what ownership of a digital asset means. Not redefine, or like even just there's so many things that you can do with a digital asset that is yet to be explored. You can have we're starting to seem like with token gated commerce and a lot of the explorations around these GFP NFT communities. But once you bring that to a game communities have been building alongside other games for forever. Analytics platforms, matchmaking platforms, all these things. And now that you have this blockchain where you have write access, so these communities are actually going to be able to interact with the actual game itself and not just this layer on top. And I think there's going to be really some amazing things that happen there. And that's where when I was talking earlier about like not necessarily interoperability of items across games, like that's certainly going to happen to some extent. But even within a single game, just being able to take the stuff that some other community has made and be like, oh, that's a really cool event system, or that's a really cool guild tool, or and being able to use those and actually have something where your items mean something more than just the one thing that is in game. You can actually do much more with them now. And I think that is just going to be a really interesting place to be explored as different games think about this space. And so, and you're going to have like your whole community contributing because it's an open program at all. So, that's all I'll leave you with. Really exciting. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Matt. I really appreciate you. And I know you have to go, but I'm just going to echo something that you said and something that Justin said about gaming black markets that have always existed. They've always been there. Gamers get mad because they're like, oh, people can go like buy and pay to play now. It's like that's always existed. This is just a way to make it legit and make it kosher. Justin, you're talking about getting tired of a game and moving on. Yeah, that happens all the time. And so many accounts, again, I'll use WoW as an example. So many accounts in WoW dating back to 2005, 2006 are sitting there collecting dust. Those players could sell those items, like legendary items, for quite a bit of money on a proprietary NFT marketplace. That player that no longer plays the game, they benefit. The person buying benefits because they get the item they want, and Activision benefits because they take a cut of the market fee. But anyway, that's it's enough about gaming. We're kind of getting off topic here. I want to kind of close things out. Justin, how much more time do you have?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to hop as well. So I was hoping to wrap it up if that's all right with you guys.
Cool. Let's wrap it up. We can get some other questions in another time. I want to thank you again for being with us today, Justin. If you want to give any closing statements, go for it now.
Yep. No, I appreciate you guys having me. The only other thing I'll say is I have been doing a bunch of Twitter Spaces myself and really trying to raise awareness around some of the top products building in the Solana ecosystem. If that sounds like something that's interesting to you, just see my pinned tweet at the top here. My next Twitter Spaces will be on Tuesday with a bunch of DeFi projects in the Solana ecosystem, as well as a few of the top market makers. So it should be an interesting one.
Cool. Yeah, guys. If you want to check out Justin's space, he's pinned a link to the top. I was in a space, I believe, last week or the week before. He does a fantastic job. It's quite informative. I learned a lot about Solana that I didn't know before. And yeah, give him a follow. Give him some love. Deshaun, I brought you up, man. I saw you in the audience and I saw the .sol and figured, hey, Solana dev, let's get him up here. So I know Justin has to go, but if you want to jump in here and share some thoughts, go for it, brother.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something really quickly. Appreciate Justin and Matt chiming in. I just wanted to say I feel like this is such a industrial revolution that we're going through right now when it comes to Sol in particular, with all of the builders and creators paving the way to make things possible. Like you said, that when are we going to see the next MMORPG on the blockchain, and being around all the different every day? It's so awesome to get to see what they're doing and what they're thinking about, because they are thinking about the fundamental tools and infrastructure to be able to create these realities to bring those MMORPGs to the blockchain, especially Solana. So I just wanted to chime in to say, it's just a beautiful time for us to be able to experience all of this. And, I think these things are coming sooner rather than later. And, I just love that you all are talking about this. That's all I wanted to say. I appreciate you bringing me up.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming up. And that was a great space. I don't know much about Solana until a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I knew what I'd read on Reddit and I knew what I'd read on Twitter. So definitely worth checking out the ecosystem, guys. They're doing some awesome things. They seem very open to answering questions and coming on spaces. So I'm curious to see how the next couple of years play out with Solana and the industry as a whole. I think this is a time where a lot of the crap has been flushed out and people that are generally passionate about building this industry have stuck around. So yeah, that was a good space. I thought we might go for a little bit longer, but they had to go. We'll probably get them on again soon, or other members of Solana. I know we have Solana Mobile coming on sometime in February, so stick around for that. I had questions about that as well, but we'll do a deep dive into their plans on that end sometime in February. So for now, everyone, take care. My name is Noah, signing out. Remember, everything you hear on this broadcast is for educational purposes only. It's not financial advice, so be safe out there. Take care.